Tons of Redfall news. The game sounds absolutely incredible. New games coming from Respawn, and NIS America is potentially looking to work with Xbox. One of the biggest releases people are looking forward to in 2023, whether you're on Xbox or you're on any other platform, is Redfall. Now, this is a game when they first showed off at the Xbox and Bethesda showcase 2 years ago. They showed it off at the end of the show. I wasn't that excited about it. I was with everybody else that was thinking it was sort of like a Left 4 Dead or a Back 4 Blood style of game. And I just thought we had a bunch of games like that we may have not needed another one. But as they gave us more information, especially at this last event this year, they told us more about the game. They showed us gameplay, and they confirmed that this is a game that has a complete single player narrative story that you can play through alone. But you can also play through this game with 3 of your other friends and have 4-player co-op, and there's going to be player choice and all of that type of stuff. So I'm more excited for Redfall. And now we have this interview here from IGN where we get a lot more information just on how everything is going to be working within Redfall. So first of all, the main premise of the story is that Redfall follows the 4 characters that they've already shown off as they fight for their lives after an experiment gone wrong results in a swarm of vampires in the eponymous Massachusetts town. The sun is blocked out and a water wall surrounds the island, seemingly preventing anyone from leaving. Now, one of the questions here was the story for Redfall, which that's the premise, but the big thing here is that we know Arcane makes games where you have choice, you have different endings, and depending on the decisions that you make will change the outcomes of how the story progresses. And we have some more information about how the story changes on the way you play. And basically, the story does not change, but the dialogue does. Now, Ricardo Bear and Andrew Brown are the lead programmers who have worked on dynamic voiceover systems. And they say here that the characters have their own commentary and they're talking about the world and whoever they're playing with, the other characters that they're playing with. And they say here, for example, if you and I are playing Devinder and Layla, they have a different relationship than, say, Remy and Jacob would. And all of this leads into the dynamic narrative system. So how you interact with the characters you're playing with, how you're interacting with the world, different dialogue will be coming out on that. They do say here that they will be talking about that later on. And one of the things they mentioned was that when they showed off the gameplay trailer, people in the comments were saying that there was a lot of talking. It was very chatty. And they addressed that, saying that that's the marketing side of the game. When you're actually playing the game, there is a lot of silent moments where you're playing through having to concentrate, having to take on your enemies in the world. So there won't be nearly as much talking in the actual game when it releases as there was in the gameplay trailer. The next question here was player choice and consequences, and Arcane Games being big on that, and if any of that will be within Redfall. For example, will there be multiple endings? And the quick answer to that is no, there will not be multiple endings, but there will be lots of different missions that you can go through that will affect some of the narrative, some of the dialogue that goes through the game. So depending on what missions you do decide to do, because there are a lot of elective missions, it says here that what it really influences is how a certain character's outcome happens or how they feel about you. And this will be really depending on who you're playing with, what characters you're playing with, the relationship you're building with the other characters within the game. All of that type of stuff, I guess, will be affected depending on the types of missions you decide to do throughout the campaign of Redfall. But the plot itself does not have branching off directions that you can go. There is no multiple endings, so everyone's going to end up seeing the exact same story. Now, when it comes to learning more about these characters, they mention that the majority of that is going to be done through the banter between the characters and through the cinematics. And again, this goes back to the character you're playing with, if you're playing solo, or if you're playing with other people, how they are interacting, as they will be going back and forth and bantering amongst each other, where you're going to learn more about these different characters. Now, one of the big things that was, I think, a positive for most people is that you can play with 4 of the same character. It doesn't matter what your friends choose. If you really like a specific character, you're still going to be able to select it. And that also goes in with if you're playing through the campaign with a single character, you're not going to be able to switch to a different character halfway through the campaign. You are locked to that character. You are locked to upgrading it. And then if you want to go back in later and play through the campaign again or try a different build, you're going to have to restart the campaign with a different character, which I think is actually not a bad thing. I think this is a good thing overall for replayability, especially if there's a lot of variety in the different ways you can build out the character and the different abilities that each one has. You're going to want to play through it, and then you're going to want to see what it's like to play through with somebody who just has a completely different skill set, and you're going to be able to do that by just restarting the campaign. And in terms of respecing as well, just like with the character selection, once you've chosen it, you're locked to throughout the campaign. You're also not going to be able to respec as you go through. And one of the questions was progression, because progression is something we heard that if you are playing within someone's world as a co-op player and you're not the host of the game, you aren't going to be advancing the campaign missions, but you are still going to be able to level your character up. And that level and progression is all per character. So there's no group progression. Just because you're using one character, not all 4 characters are going to get XP. Now, if everybody is playing as the same character, there will be different costumes and outfits, so you can kind of differentiate your characters that way. And I mean, at the same time, even if you're the same character, if you have different builds, you're going to be playing the game a different way. Specifically, it says here, I can be in Black Ops Remy version, and then the way you build out your skills, the way I build out my skills, which weapons you have, which weapons I have, which remnants you found, which remnants I found, it will feel different even if we're both playing Remy. So there will definitely be variation. Let's say even if you had all 4 Remys on one team, everyone's going to probably be playing it a different way, because everyone usually has a different play style. And specifically in terms of the customization, there is actually a lot of stuff here that actually affects gameplay. So it says here, Devinder has a set of skills, active and passive, and then some that are kind of common with everybody. So every character is going to have active and passive skills, and then stuff that is common amongst all 4 characters. And then the weapons themselves will come with rarities, so they all have different traits to them, which will affect gameplay. And on top of that, there's other equipment that will affect gameplay. And then there's something called the remnants, which was mentioned up above. And from what I'm understanding is when an enemy becomes a vampire, the world warps around them, and then that remnant actually gives off some sort of ability, some sort of charge that is going to affect your gameplay, and you can carry these around to modify the gameplay. Specifically saying here, they are basically magic items. So there's a lot of stuff here, guns, your loadouts, the remnants, all that stuff is going to change the way that each character plays. Now it looks like there's actually 3 types of remnants. You have the ward remnant, the blood remnant, and the soul remnant. And they were asked if we can get more information about those remnants, and they say here that some of the remnants will be in the base game, and then some will probably come out shortly after. But one is defense oriented, one is health oriented, and one affects how your skills work or how weapons work. And you can see here this picture, if you open it up more, you can see that you have the remnants here. I guess the remnants attached to the weapon will completely change how that weapon actually functions and works within the game. So that's pretty cool, because there's going to be a ton of customization. You can see all the different weapons already just within this screenshot. I'm sure there's gonna be tons to find throughout the world. When it comes to the experience of co-op versus solo, one thing, if you read through this paragraph, there's a lot of interesting stuff there, but the solo experience is a classic Arcane experience. So if you're somebody who is hoping to be able to play this game and really enjoy it on your own with the atmosphere, maybe sneak around or just running guns blazing, that's all going to be able to be done with playing solo. When you go to co-op, the game does get harder, but it definitely changes the way that you're going to be able to experience the game, because you're going to have multiple different loadouts, multiple different weapons, and multiple different abilities that are all going to be able to be thrown at these vampires, which makes it a little less scary and probably a little less atmospheric, but also just a bigger challenge in its own, because of the fact that you're going to be just harder overall. In terms of the size of the open world, they do say here it is a very open world, but it's a game where you are based running around on foot, urban exploration, so the map is the right size for that. It's not going to be the biggest thing in the world because you're not driving around, you're not flying around, so you don't need as much real estate as you would for a game like that. But it does sound like it is going to be pretty open with tons of exploration that's going to be able to be done. And one of the things within the trailer that was shown off was this door here. If you remember watching that trailer, and what this is called a nest, which is like a psychic space that doesn't have to adhere to the normal architectural boundaries. And by that, it means that it's going to be these procedurally generated areas that you go into, and within these areas, you're going to be able to find these powerful remnants that you're going to want to use. They're completely optional and they are replayable, but they do say here you're going to want to jump into them. So this is a ton of information about Redfall. Make sure to go check out the article if you really want to read everything that they talked about. But I'm more excited the more that they talk about this game. It's supposed to be coming out in 2023, and they do say here that they are just about to hit the content lock section of the game development, and then they're going to be moving over to the enhancing, bug fixing, and polishing and tuning from that point forward. So this game probably is very, very close to being completely finished, and hopefully this is an early 2023 release. So developers Respawn have made some of the best games. I really think that they have done a great job of literally releasing hit after hit. With we have Titanfall and Titanfall 2, Jedi Fallen Order, Apex Legends, all great games in their own right for the genres that they are in. And Titanfall 2, for a lot of people, the single player campaign specifically was one of the best first person shooter single player campaigns that they've played. For me, I absolutely loved it. It's really high up there on my list, but the game itself, I don't believe sold very well. It came out during a time where there was tons of competition, and that was a shame because it had put doubts that Titanfall 3 was never going to be coming. But it looks like Respawn is recruiting now for a single player FPS set in the Apex Legends universe, but this isn't Titanfall 3, which is odd because a lot of people are clamoring for a Titanfall 3. But there is a new job listing here saying that there's looking for somebody to work on a game in the Apex Universe's FPS incubation project, a brand new Respawn single player adventure. And this new single player title is a developer's dream playground with the freedom to innovate made possible by the unique universe it inhabits. And this goes back to something that was reported by GamesBeat earlier this year, saying that they were looking to make a new game with the principles of mobility and style, which literally is Titanfall with mobility, running across walls, sprinting, sliding, all in style when you're taking out enemies. But apparently it isn't a Titanfall sequel. But this is another game coming from Respawn that I'm pretty excited to see exactly what this is. We know that they are working on Star Wars Jedi Survivor, a sequel to Fallen Order, which, like I said, an absolutely incredible game if you haven't checked it out. I believe it is also right now available on Xbox Game Pass through EA Play, so you can easily just go check it out there. But we'll see what this is. Fingers crossed that maybe this ends up being Titanfall 3. Maybe they're just being extremely secretive in the way that they are branding it when they're looking for a job so that they never give it away. And I think if they were to announce a Titanfall 3 game, people would go out and buy that game. I think people would be excited that it was here because it's a game that they didn't buy right away, but I feel like they discovered it later on after everybody was talking about just how good it was in terms of the single player campaign, and even the multiplayer was a ton of fun. So as we know, Xbox is continuously trying to improve in Japan, and while improving in Japan, when you bring over games that are enjoyed by the people there, people in other parts of the world are going to be happy with the games that come over, especially if they are on Xbox Game Pass. Now we have another rumor here, and this comes via Special Nick on the Xbox Era podcast, saying that Microsoft is working with NIS America to try and bring certain games to the Xbox. He can't say which series these are, but he does know which ones they are. He's just not obviously allowed to say. And I think this is a great move by Xbox if they are able to pull this off. Now, going over to NIS America, I think there's 3 franchises that would be the biggest if they were able to get them, or even just one of these into Xbox Game Pass on a regular basis. You have the Trail series, you have the Disgaea series, and you have the Ys series. So those are 3 big JRPGs that would have huge relevance to people in Japan as well as in the West too, because those games I believe do decently well here. Obviously not as well as they do in Japan, but people do play them in the West. And you take a look just overall how Xbox is doing in Japan. They have been doing extremely well with the Xbox Series X and S compared to the Xbox One. As the latest results right now, the Xbox Series X and S has sold 260,000 units, which has already far surpassed the Xbox One's lifetime console sales. It's crazy to think about that. From 2013 to 2020, it's 7 years, the Xbox Series X and S has surpassed those sales in Japan in just 2 years. And from the charts that we're seeing, it's going to do better than the Xbox 360. When we know with the Xbox 360, there was tons of Japanese games on there. There were even exclusive Xbox 360 Japanese JRPGs that people bought 360s for. So if they're able to get more of these styles of games into Xbox Game Pass, I think it will be huge for growing the service in different parts of the world. We'll have to wait and see if this does come true, because again, this is a rumor from Special Nick Xbox Era, who, to say the least, has not been 100% on all of the rumors that he's put out there, but let's see what they say here. Big if true, Disgaea would probably have the biggest impact, but I prefer Trails. The person says hopefully Trails, but I'm not scared of Ys either. This person says Ys are the legend of heroes you can forget. NAS doesn't own the franchises. The IPs are owned fully by Nyan Falcom, so they would have to decide that. NAS is just publishing the games. I'm not sure how that would work, but I'm guessing the publisher can choose kind of where they want to put the games. I don't know, could be wrong on that. Bring the whole Falcom library to Xbox. I would love to replay all those Legends of Heroes games. NAS, if history isn't wrong, is one of the anti-Xbox group of studios, so I didn't expect anything. If there is, I support it. So lots of people are applauding this, wanting to see it happen with different games that they would want to see come over to Xbox. I think this would be a great thing. And I really do hope it happens, especially now in 2022, as we're getting through the second half of the year. It could be a big announcement for some of these games coming onto Xbox Game Pass. That's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on Redfall. What do you think Respawn is working on next? And do you want to see NIS American games coming over to Xbox? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you're new here and you liked what you saw, consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for your support. And I'll catch you in the next video.